All right, we are broadcasting, so just give it a couple seconds and then you're good to go.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Shoot Your Shot podcast, where we will be talking. Oh, wow, that was terrible. Let me start over.
All right, give it a
Oh.
few seconds and do it right this time.
Probably wasn't even loud enough, was it?
Hello, welcome to Shoot Your Shot.
Hello. Okay, okay, here we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of the Shoot Your Shot podcast. On this podcast, we talk about all things college basketball here. My name is John, and I'm joined by my buddy Aldo. Aldo, how's it going?
How's it going, John?
It's going well, going well. I can't remember if I gave you a birthday shout out on our last podcast, but you had a birthday a few days ago, so happy birthday, and I hope you enjoyed my gift.
Oh yeah, that line was nice. I need it. I know I told these people free money, but this week is the freest of money, I promise.
Wow, we have a promise.
But
That
I did tell everybody to load the boat on the under for Luke Bryan. So I just wanted to, put that out there that he made it interesting for us, but for people that listen to me, you're welcome on that.
he sure did. It's kind of funny to watch the Super Bowl national anthem with your stopwatch up and making all sorts of noises when you're supposed to be standing at attention. But you were right there. So in every non-basketball pick you've given us, you've been great. On every basketball pick you've given us, you've been awful.
Yeah, maybe we need to switch up this podcast.
we can we can turn it around. So we want to keep to our structure that we had last podcast. We're talking about some interesting things that caught our eye this last week. Give a shout out to the little guys in the mid-major minute. Talk about some of the games upcoming, and then get you some of our picks and a sign off. But before we do all of that, we have history in the making on Saturday in the college basketball world. The selection committee on Saturday at 12:30 is going to be unveiling the top 16 seeds as it stands now for the NCAA tournament. This is things have happened in the past. It has always just been kind of radio silence from the selection committee until Selection Sunday, when they come out with the field of 68 teams and games start later that week. It's a pretty big change that's happening this Saturday. And Aldo, I want to get your take on just that approach now.
Yeah, I think we have different takes on this, but assuming that they only do this as like a 1 or 2 time thing before Selection Sunday, I'm kind of a fan of it. Um, they're giving us a little insight, which I think is nice. But if they do it week to week, I will take back everything I say, and I won't be a fan of it because I don't like that for college football. There's too much like, oh, well, they beat them this week, so they're bumping up and down. Like, we don't need to see that every week. It's about a body of work. But I don't have a problem with them showing the top 16 seeds, um, once or twice beforehand, just so we can kind of get a feel what they're thinking. Now, if they were showing the bottom 16, I think that would be really interesting, to show who's in as of now, who has work left to do. So that would be really interesting, but I think that they would get a lot of criticism for that. So I can't see them doing that. But I don't think that it really is that big of an issue, assuming, like I said, that they only do it once or twice before Selection Sunday.
Got it. So you actually kind of stole some of my thunder there, but we do have different views on this. And originally, when I heard this news, I was pretty upset. I mean, I'm in the school of the NCAA tournament is perfect. Don't change it. Don't change Selection Sunday. No need to modify this. But I was listening to a couple folks who are close to college basketball, particularly John Calipari and Jay Billis over the last couple of weeks, and they've slowly started to turn me around to this idea. I don't hate it anymore, but I really think that showing the top 16 teams really doesn't do anything for us. Like, we know
Right.
who the
Yeah.
best 16 teams are, where you slot them on the 2 line or the 3 line, like whatever. It would be so much more valuable, like you said, to get maybe the last 8 at-large bids and the first 8 out. That would be so much more valuable. So you're sitting here, instead of being Oregon, like, oh, am I on the 3 line because I just lost to UCLA? As opposed to the 2, it would be way better if you're Houston and you're saying, oh God, we are now on the outside looking in. We really need to crank things up. So I think it's so much more valuable at-large bids at the end of the bracket as opposed to the front of the bracket here. And a lot of people compare it to college football, and although it is kind of a update in the standings, I really don't see it that way. We're only getting 25% of the field here, and the top 25%. So let's crunch some quick numbers here. 4 teams make the college football playoff. If we were to get 25% of that, we'd get the number 1 seed. So this is really like the college football committee coming out and saying Alabama's the 1 seed and not giving us who 2, 3, and 4 are. So I don't really see the value in it but I understand it generates some buzz about the program kind of during the dog days of February here. So it's not a bad idea, but I don't think it adds any value. And until we start seeing a full bracket, it really won't change my opinion.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I think even if I think it would be awesome if they gave the last 8 teams in and 8 teams out. But even if they did that week to week, I think that's too much. I just don't like the week to week. This is what's going on exactly to get into the playoff kind of bit. Just my opinion. I hated how like football, the one like Baylor. I'm not sure. I could have the wrong team. Baylor, TCU. They like didn't play and they were 4, and then someone else played and then they bumped them. So like I just don't like that. Like I don't like. If someone loses a close home game in one week and then the next week they're in, they're out. I don't like that. I want to see it Selection Sunday. So hopefully they don't start doing it week to week, but I guess we will see.
Yeah, I agree. One time in February is probably appropriate. If they make this a weekly thing, it's clearly just kind of a grab for attention and ratings. But yeah, I mean, we'll see. It'll be an interesting occurrence on Saturday. So with that coming up in Saturday, Aldo and I actually took a stab at making our top 16 team rankings for the tourney. So it was kind of funny. We did this exercise and we each ranked our top 16 teams, and we had 15 of the 16 exactly the same. So we're going to run through those now and then get a debate on some of the teams that we saw a lot differently. So Aldo, if you want to go through and just give your rankings.
Yep, I'll start from 1, go right to 16, and that means that my number 1 team will be the number 1 overall seed. Number 5 would be my top 2, and so on and so forth. So my number 1 overall seed, I have Gonzaga. 2, I have Villanova. 3, Baylor. 4, Kansas. So those would be my 1s. Number 5, I have Florida State. 6, North Carolina. 7, Oregon. 8, Arizona. So those would be my 2s. Number 9, I have Virginia. Number 10, UCLA. Number 11, Louisville. Number 12, Wisconsin. So those would be my 3s. And then number 13, I have Kentucky. 14, I have West Virginia. 15, I have Duke. And my last team, 16. So the final 4 seed, I have Florida.
Okay, a lot of recognizable names there. I'll run through mine, and ours is actually very similar at the top. So my 1 seed, overall 1 seed would be Villanova. Then I have Gonzaga at 2, Baylor at 3, and Kansas are 4. So those are my 1s. My 2s are Louisville, UCLA, North Carolina, and Oregon. Arizona, West Virginia, Florida State. And then my final set of 4s are Duke, Wisconsin, Florida, and Cincinnati. So right off the bat, we have 15 teams identical. The 2 teams that we have differently, I have Cincinnati in as my final 4th seed and have left out Kentucky. You have Kentucky in as your first 4th seed and have left out Cincinnati. So I want to get your case for Kentucky and then and what you did or didn't see in Cincinnati.
Yeah, I mean, I like Cincinnati. I think they're underrated nationally. I just don't think the resume's there. I know they only have 2 losses, but the American is way down. Now Gonzaga, they're undefeated, so I think that is extremely valuable. Whether you play in whatever conference they're undefeated and they have a couple big wins. Cincinnati's got a couple losses. I know they're one was against Rhode Island. At Rhode Island, and I think another one was away too. So could they sneak up on the 4 line? Yeah, but I just think Kentucky has a lot more quality wins than Cincinnati does. I know that they haven't really had the opportunity, but I just think Kentucky is more deserving right now. Cincinnati. Now, if Cincinnati like runs the table, I would completely agree with you. But yeah, that's my reasoning right now.
Got it. Okay. So when I was looking at this, first of all, this was a very difficult task. I mean, I knew I kind of had a list of 18 teams that I knew, and just shuffling that, getting that down to 16, and
Right.
finding
Yeah.
my rankings was tough.
There's only about 18 that deserve to be there, but once you get into them, it's very tough to organize them.
Yeah, it was super tough, and we'll get to some of the other trades I was looking for. But with Cincinnati, I mean, I looked at their resume. So you're right; they have 2 losses. The third game of the year and neutral site to Rhode Island, who Rhode Island was preseason top 25, and December 10th at Butler. No shame in that loss. And then they've ran the table since. And what they didn't do, in my opinion, compared to what Kentucky did, is Cincinnati played on the road at Iowa State and won in overtime. You can ask any Big 12 coach how difficult it is to do that. And then they got the benefit of having Xavier in that annual matchup, and they took down Xavier. So um, the American being a little weak, they really got the job done in the non-conference, I think, and only took those 2 losses. As compared to Kentucky, when you look at Kentucky's resume, like, man, they scheduled tough. I mean, they played and lost to UCLA, Louisville, Kansas, and Florida. They didn't go on the road one time, and their big win, North Carolina, overtime win in Vegas, which was an awesome game. I mean, that's kind of it. I'd almost argue the point there with you with those quality wins. I mean, they have North Carolina, then their next best win is like Georgia, maybe Michigan State. I mean, they played a tough schedule, but they lost all those games, and then they had that loss against Tennessee. So when we're splitting hairs at the 4 line there, I just really didn't like what I saw from the Kentucky resume.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we'll see going forward. Cincinnati, like I said, is real good. I don't know. I have a hard time. I had a hard time leaving Kentucky off the 4 line. I know we were at that Carolina game, so I think that's another tough thing that you see these teams and you know that they're this good,
Right.
and it's just real hard to decipher between them. So yeah, that you made some good points, and I love Cincinnati, but it's an ever changing 1 through 16.
Exactly right. So another team that we both had on here, but had pretty differently, actually, I think 10 or 11 of our teams were actually slotted within 2 ranks of one another, but we had a few differences. So Florida State is one that we differed on. I had them as my 12th overall team. You had them as your 5th overall team. What do you see in Florida State's resume right now?
So I put them up at the 2 line because they just have a ridiculous amount of top 50 wins. I just when you can rack up 8, 9 wins against top 50 opponents already, I think that they're definitely deserving of a 2 line. I think they're underrated. They went through that stretch. They won. They had that stretch where they played 6 games, top 25 opponents. They went 5-1.
Yep.
And everybody was kind of hopping on the bandwagon. And then they lost 2 games to Georgia Tech and Syracuse, I want to say.
Yeah, back to
So
back.
people kind of hopped off, but then they just won their last 2 games by like 80 points. And like I said, they really only have like one bad loss, Temple. I don't know how we did that, but we did. So yeah, I love the amount of quality wins. They've been good throughout the year, and yeah, so I have them very high. Of them number 5. I think that they are definitely deserving of a 2 seed right now. I don't know. You have them at 12, right?
Yes, I have them at 12, and I agree with everything you stated. I mean, they went on a crazy run in the ACC, just racking up those wins, like you said. But the reason I dropped them down to the 3 level is when we're talking about 2s and 3s, everyone in the top 10, 15 has good wins. Maybe not as many as Florida State, but not everyone has a loss to Temple and a loss to Georgia Tech. And those 2 losses really dropped them down a little bit for me. I do think that they are a super dangerous team, and if they could hit some free throws, could do some serious damage. But right now, everyone at this stage, when we're talking, 1 through 4 seeds has good wins. It's who doesn't have the bad losses, and that's why I had Florida State a little lower.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Temple is definitely a bad loss, but they also haven't lost at home. Their 3 ACC losses are all on the road, and honestly, Georgia Tech isn't as terrible of a loss as everybody thought it was going to be.
That's true.
People in the preseason were predicting them to not win an ACC game, which it was just ridiculous anyway. But they're like 5-6 right now, so it's not as bad of a loss. But yeah, the Temple loss definitely, we'll see. It could hurt them. But it was also on a neutral, so they don't have any home losses, which I think home losses to me are worth double in the worst way. Um, so yeah, they to me the one bad loss there is made up by their like 8 or 9 top 50 wins.
No, that makes total sense. And then, so another team which I had ranked higher than you did was Louisville. I had them fifth, so on the 2 line, and you had them 11th, looking on the 3
So why
line.
why did you have them that high?
So Louisville is always a team that I struggle with because really they don't get they're kind of new. They're bouncing around different conferences, but when you look at their schedule, I was really shocked. I didn't fully digest what they had done. I mean, they have 5 losses. That's a lot. But listen to these losses: Baylor, Virginia, Notre Dame, Florida State, and Virginia. Like, there's not a bad loss in the bunch. Those are probably the best 5 losses, if you can even say that, of any team. I mean, they've 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 never been upset like this, and their non-conference is pretty good. They took down Wichita, Purdue, Kentucky. They've racked up good wins in the ACC. So when I looked at their resume, I was really just impressed that like they don't drop any games that they're not supposed to. They take care of business and have suffered 3 of those 5 losses on the road. One of them was neutral. So I like what they're doing. They have some solid wins, and they really don't have any bad losses. All those losses are excusable, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, I could definitely have them higher. They always give me trouble too. Their style is so unique. They destroy teams, and then they come out and like Virginia, they just can't beat Virginia, and
Right.
they're just I don't know. They're just a real unique team. They're not mentioned with the Blue Bloods, but they essentially are. Patino has that thing rolling. I think some of it could be, like you said, they've been in like 3 conferences. They went from the Big East to they were in the American, I believe, and then and then now in the ACC. So hopping
Right.
around never helps. I'm sure people still consider them like a Big East school, but yeah, just the 5 losses already, I bumped them down. But honestly, teams like 5 to 12, you can interchange however you would like and make your case for or against. Just the way this year's been,
Mm-hmm.
it's wild. I mean. Other than maybe Florida, if any one of these teams made it to the Final Four, I would not be shocked one bit.
Oh yeah, I
Uh,
agree with that.
it's it's just that crazy of a year where there's a lot of good teams.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, and definitely. And before we move on, I just want to get one last note in there. I'll give you the same opportunity. But my 17th team was South Carolina. I'm really interested to see what the committee does with them because they had they had 3 losses when Thornwell was out, and then they lost at Kentucky when Dozier was out, and then they just took their first full strength loss, if you will, against Alabama in triple overtime or quadruple overtime. So if the committee is going to be really true to how they value games where your star players aren't playing, South Carolina has a great case to get a good seed. So curious to see what happens either on Saturday or on Selection Sunday with them.
yeah, yeah, that'll be interesting. It'll also be interesting to once Duke gets a 1 seed tomorrow because Coach K wasn't there for a couple games and Grayson wasn't there for a game and Duke's undefeated. Whenever for the last like 2 games.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, no, that's a great point. It will be interesting to see because they're a really good team and that yeah, like you said, they've only had one really true loss when their whole team is healthy and man, they defend and they're fun to watch.
Yeah, they're awesome. And then yeah, to your Duke point, I mean Duke's undefeated when Harry Giles has a double double. So
Yeah,
that's 1 seed worthy.
yeah, oh, definitely. I think I don't think he missed yesterday. He was a solid 3 for 3. Played about,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, I think he hit double digits in minutes though, so that's good.
Oh, there we go. I mean, only one more category, man. Fouls or like missed defensive assignments, and he'll be there.
Yeah,
So I think this was really cool, and we're going to revisit this next week when the committee comes out with their top 16 and see how we did and see where they went wrong, where we went wrong. So we'll revisit this next week. But let's shift gears a little bit to the week that was in college basketball, and I know that there are 2 topics that we want to hit on that. We're just no other word to say, but absolutely crazy. I'm sure you've seen by now, but Virginia Commonwealth, VCU, were a part of two of the craziest endings in back-to-back games. Aldo, you and I watched one of them together. Give us a little background of what went down in VCU's world this week.
Yeah, so the first game this weekend they played St. Bonaventures and
At St. Bonaventures.
at the Bonnies, and so they hit a three to go ahead by one with zero point 0.4 seconds left, and so pretty much what happened was that they stormed the court. The ref said that there was still time left they weren't able to get the ball in, so they gave them a tech. VCU shoots the technical, makes it, and then ends up winning in overtime. Well, I mean, it's a tough call, but honestly, I don't feel bad for VCU. We were watching that, and their coaching staff and bench players were like at mid-court.
Sorry, feel bad for the Bonnies.
Yes, I'm sorry. I don't feel bad for the Bonnies. Their coaching staff and players were at mid-court right after he banged in the three. So there was still time on the clock, and you can't blame the students if like the coaches are in the middle of the court celebrating. I don't really feel bad. They celebrated just too soon. It's a shame. You don't like to give VCU a win that they don't really deserve, but I can't really blame the fans because the coaches, they kind of started the whole thing. They could have stayed on the bench, and you always see that people holding people back. They know there's time left. Well,
right.
They clearly had no idea that there was time left because they were all on the court.
Yeah, it was a wild ending. You're right. They stormed it. I don't feel bad for the Bonnies either. I mean, the rules are the rules. You can't run on the court and stop the game when there's 0.4 seconds left in a 1-point game. So just a wild ending on VCU. And
we know that you can we know that you can win a game down one, but with 0.4 left too.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, there's a handful of outcomes, and shout out to, who was it, Newton, who hit that technical free throw to send it to overtime. I mean, that's crazy pressure. There was a review. There was a huge delay. Fans were just on the court, and this kid steps up to the line, drills it, ties it at 65, I think, and then VCU takes it down in overtime. So, if that wasn't enough for their Saturday, then just a few days ago, they're on the road at GW. Almost the same scenario here. So, Aldo, what happened there?
So 0.4 seconds left, you never know what can happen. This time they're down one. Will Wade calls a timeout, and it's a real interesting. I've actually never seen this play done, but so he had whoever was inbounding the ball run cross court, which you see all the time, to try to evade the person standing in front, trying to block the pass. And he had Jaquan Lewis go up and kind of just set a screen on him, and the guy plowed him over, so they called a foul.
Called a charge, a dead ball charge.
Dead ball charge. It was wild. I've never seen anything like it. It's kind of I'm not a fan of the call. I just want to say that I'm not a fan of the call. I think it's a little ridiculous, but I give all the credit to Will Wade. That's a hell of a design. They're making the refs make a decision. Usually with 0.4 left, you see him chuck it near the rim, hope somebody can maybe tip it in or something like that. So yeah, to even think of that, I give Will Wade a lot of credit. But I'm not a fan of the call, but it was wild to have two games like that in a row.
Yeah, crazy. And you're right. It was Lewis this time too. So Lewis was the star. The free throws down with 0.4 seconds. Just a crazy run for VCU to keep a really fluid, really competitive A10 conference on its heels now with two big road wins coming in dramatic fashion. Some other things that we saw this weekend that were just totally crazy were some box scores. So I have some numbers. Do you mind if I just run through?
Yeah, no, go ahead. Yeah, these are all you. Give us those crazy numbers.
So this is wild. Okay, this is wild. And we're going to go to some goofy conferences here. But St. Mary's played San Diego. The score was 71-27. St. Mary's beat San Diego 71-27.
It's crazy. I told kids to shoot your shot when you're 0 for 17, but you can get an efficient shot, and I think San Diego needed to do that a little bit.
It's nuts. So San Diego had 9 points at halftime. Some other numbers here. They made, for the entire game, they made 3 2-pointers in the entire game. They made 3 free throws and 6 threes, once again, in the entire game. And 7 dudes. So this is, I read into this. This is even crazier. 7 dudes on San Diego scored a combined 27 points. So their leading scorer had 11, and then their next leading scorer had 3. They had like 6 guys who had either 2 or 3 points throughout the
At
entire
least they
game.
were spreading it around.
Right. I mean, yeah,
Everybody was just off.
they were spreading it around. I mean, right. If you're going to score 27 points, do it as a team. And that's really what San Diego did. So, props to them for taking the team approach. But just crazy. I saw that it was like 40 something to 9. And then I was monitoring the game. That same night, this is all Saturday, Eastern Washington and Portland State went into triple overtime, I believe. Eastern Washington won 130 to 124. Just an absolute shootout. Through all 3 overtimes, each team scored double digits in the overtimes, which is rare. I mean, it's a 5-minute, usually a pretty tight, tense scenario.
It's more than San Diego scored in a half.
Yeah, exactly right. San Diego, right. And those are the plus minutes. 6 players in the entire game fouled out. So you're like you're scraping your bench here. 2 players from Eastern Washington had 45 points. 2.
Yeah, that's
people.
wild.
2 guys scored 90 points.
40 in college doesn't come that often. You'll see maybe 1 40-point game a week, if that. To have 2 on the same team, I know they went to triple overtime, but that's just wild.
It's nuts. And then my final point here, which I couldn't understand how this was possible. Nobody on Portland State had a double-double. They played for like 55 minutes and scored 124 points, and nobody had a double-double. Just like bonkers stuff that went completely under the radar on an awesome college basketball Saturday. But just wanted to have a little box score dissection here of what the hell was going on. It was really cool to kind of like dig back through these box scores and see what was happening in these games.
Yeah, that's crazy. Before we get over to the other mid-major schools in the mid-major minute, you want to go over the 2 big games last night real quick? What did you think about both of them?
Yeah, so 2 big games. So it was a doubleheader on ESPN. We had UNC visiting Duke and Oregon visiting UCLA. I got a couple takes on the Oregon UCLA game. Do you want to take something on the first ACC game?
Yeah, sure. Grayson Allen went off. I joke around with him tripping and whatnot, but it's good to see him back playing well. It's a big win for Duke. They're the best win on their resume was Florida, who has great computer numbers, like we said. Maybe a little overrated, but this is a big time win for them. Jason Tatum went off in the second half. I still am a little worried about them without the point guard because Tatum scored 19, but I think he was something like 5 for 14 from the floor. He can kind of he wants to take over. And with Luke Kennard, he's still their most efficient scorer by far, and he takes the 3rd most amount of shots. He's got the 3rd highest usage percentage. It's just crazy to me. But it's a big win for them. Carolina was without Hicks. They got out rebounded in the game, and they usually destroy people on the glass. I think they're one of the best offensive rebounding teams in the country. They got out rebounded by Duke yesterday. So yeah, I wouldn't put too much into it for Carolina, but it was definitely a big win for Duke, and nice to see Grayson kind of come back to his All-American status there.
Yeah, it is, and seeing Duke gel is pretty special just because of the talent they had.
Oh yeah.
I don't have too much to add, but one thing I wanted to say is like all week we've been hearing about how this North Carolina offense was so different than the ones in the past. So they were shooting all these threes. And they shot 4 of 12 from deep, like the most pedestrian display you can have from deep. So, it's Duke Carolina. It's going to deliver, and Carolina lost one at Cameron. No true shame there, but exciting, and we'll be waiting for the wraparound later this year. And then right after that game, we jump into Oregon UCLA, which was a crazy game, one that I had really highly anticipated as I've followed both of these teams pretty closely this year. Oregon laid the smackdown on Arizona at home, and for the first half of this game, they kind of just kept it rolling. I think they were up 19 points at one point on UCLA. Everyone was talking like, "Oh, UCLA, they can't defend. Look at Oregon, so balanced and stuff." And it really played into that hand for the first half. Second half comes around, UCLA starts to mount a comeback, and there's maybe 5 or 6 minutes left. It's a tight game, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, I've seen this a million times. Dillon Brooks is about to take over, and Dillon Brooks disappeared. UCLA strapped up on defense. They really started getting in people's grills, taking care of their man, and Oregon was just stifled at the end of the game. UCLA went on to win it. Big win at home at Pauley, so they split the season series. But it was a really interesting game, and Brooks disappeared and Lonzo burst onto the scene at the end with a couple big shots.
Yeah, I saw a stat today that the last like 14 or 15 minutes of the game, UCLA held them to 0.65 points per possession, which is just insane, especially for a defensively challenged team like UCLA. I mean, if they can even put together a half with that kind of defensive intensity, they could be the best team in the country. They have the best offense in the country. If they could just be competent on defense, we know what they're capable of. So yeah, to see them lock down and get back in that game, no shame really in the loss for Oregon, same as Carolina on the road. But Oregon actually doesn't have, I believe, a true big road win. All their big games have come at home. So it'll be interesting. I'm not a huge believer in that if you don't win on the road, you can't win in the tournament because there's a huge difference to me playing a true road game and playing at a neutral site, NCAA. So I don't think people make a big deal of that, but I don't think it's that big of a deal. But yeah, just to see UCLA play hell of a half of defense or most of a half, it was nice to see that they can actually do it. So we'll see going forward if they can keep that up or not. All right, it's time for the mid-major minute, John. I know that you have a team that you've been following all year, probably one of the worst conferences, if not the worst, in the country, but this is your team, and you made me watch them earlier in the year, and I will give it to you. They are fun to watch, but who is that, and what is up with them?
Okay, so you are referring to the team known as Savannah State. Um, and you're right, they are fun to watch. So let me give you a little background on Savannah State here. Um, that conference you were talking about, they are in the Mid-Eastern Atlantic Conference, which is the worst conference. You're right. But man, are they exciting. So they are on probation this year because of some academic issues. So they can't make the tournament. And their head coach, who's been there for about 10, 11 years, has totally flipped the script on how they want to play. So here's what's going down at Savannah State. They are number one in tempo. So they play the fastest of any team in the country. And they are number one in 3-point distribution. So 46% of their points are coming from three. So essentially what they're doing is they are running and gunning by definition. They're shooting unbelievable amounts of threes, and in doing so, playing absolutely no defense. So they had a crazy non-conference schedule, actually. Let me just read some things off here. They played Iowa State and let up 113 points, played Iowa, let up 116, played Grambling State and let up 110, and played Oregon and let up 120. So it is just like it is a free-for-all out there when they play. But it's super cool because all they're doing is shooting threes. And the kicker is they're not any good at it.
I was just gonna say, you made me, I was looking up stats on them myself, and yeah, they're like number one in the country in tempo, and in the tops in the country in shooting threes. So you think, okay, well that's so they're shooting a lot of threes. They're probably good at shooting threes. They are not.
They're not.
Give me. Do you have the exact number that they are in KenPom?
They are 303rd out of 351. They shoot 31% from deep. So good lord, they chuck, but they just can't make any, and it's kind of funny.
Man, that's awesome though. Who wouldn't want to play for a guy like that?
I know, it's awesome.
That is the shoot your shot coach of the year right there. I don't care if you're making them, we're shooting them.
Exactly right, and he's telling his team to do it. So we're about a week late on them because they were on a 5-game winning streak within their conference. They dropped their last two, but over the course of 7 games, their last 7 games, they have shot 343s, so 49 a game. 49 a game. And they've made 97, 14 a game, so that puts them at 28%.
All right,
their
so
last game,
they're cooling off a little bit.
Their last game against Norfolk State, they shot 58 threes and made 11. So I mean, it's wild. I would love to see this coach Horace get a guy who can actually shoot and see what they can do, but he's fully gone on board with this run and gun mentality. And you know what? They're like 7-4 in conference. And, that's all you can ask for. So super, super cool team. I don't think they'll be on TV again for the rest of the year because they won't play in their conference tourney. but just something that I felt needed to be discussed at the mid-major level is just this team is changing the game and not any good at it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Hopefully next year they're eligible for the tournament because that's one of those teams that you just when they're on you want to watch them just because.
Yeah, and
Um,
before we go, the game you watched, they did beat Oregon State in overtime. So they strung together one game and was able to beat a Power 5 opponent, Power 6
hey,
opponent, which is cool.
you shoot that many threes, one of those nights somebody's going off. But
Exactly right.
all right, so the team that I want to talk about this week um, is the Furman Paladins. Now, I don't even know if half the people here have heard of them. They're in the Southern Conference, okay, which is actually one of the better mid-major conferences this year. One of the mid-major darlings in the beginning of the year was Chattanooga. They made the tournament last year. They got everybody back, plus the player of the year from the year before that was out injured. So everybody was on them, like, that they would be one of the top mid-majors. They beat was it Tennessee opening night,
Yep.
I believe?
Yep.
So everybody was on them, and then they've just kind of struggled a little bit. They lost a couple games they probably shouldn't have at a conference. Then in that conference, East Tennessee State got hot. People were hopping on their bandwagon. Um, and now we're almost done with conference play, and Furman sits alone in first place. So it's just wild because, like I said, it's one of the better mid-major conferences. You have Chattanooga, East Tennessee State, both really good teams. UNC Greensboro's been solid this year, and Wofford's always solid. And this team is alone in first place. And so I watched last night. They played a great game against Chattanooga. They beat them. So they've beaten East Tennessee State and Chattanooga, both of like the favorites in the conference. Looks like right now that they're going to get the one seed in the tournament. So hopefully they can make a run to March and make a name for themselves because they have one of the best mascots that I've ever heard of. And one of the reasons that it's awesome is that I had no clue what it was. They're the Furman Paladins. And
What
I
is a
would
paladin? I need to know.
I am glad you asked. So it is one of the foremost warriors of Charles the Great. So it's just it's a knight, but the description of it is awesome. They said that they're sometimes known as the 12 Peers or the foremost warriors of Charles the Great. So what a great mascot. They're actually good. They're actually a real good team. They play good defense, have a bunch of guards that can shoot. So we'll see if they can make it to March and make a name for themselves. I'm sure that CBS would do a great job with the whole Paladin reference there because I mean I love it so.
They should be playing on San Jose State's court if they're the Paladins.
Oh, that would be a hell of a matchup. And for anyone that doesn't know what John's talking about, just please go on Google and type in San Jose State basketball court, and you'll see what we're talking about. It is probably the most ridiculous court in hoops, and even if you've seen Oregon, it's way more ridiculous.
It blows everyone out of the water.
Yeah. So what games do you like for this upcoming weekend?
Yeah, so two stuck out here, and the big one, of course, is Gonzaga at St. Mary's. Gonzaga got the best of St. Mary's earlier in this year. It really, really took it to them at the kennel, and this time Gonzaga plays at St. Mary's. Really highly anticipated game because Gonzaga right now is hovering around the number one overall seed, still undefeated, and St. Mary's has a really, really solid record, but of course can't get over that Gonzaga hump. So that game is Saturday night, and I'm really looking forward to that game because, as you heard earlier, St. Mary's held someone to 9 points, so they play really slow, really good defense, and Gonzaga is just totally a really, really loaded team. Curious to see how this shakes out. I tend to lean Gonzaga, even though it's at St. Mary's. I think Gonzaga is just so loaded. They're so deep. And Mark Few's been able to integrate a lot of these transfers and younger and older guys into a really, really solid team. So I think it's probably the biggest game St. Mary's has had in a long time. It's going to be wild, as a lot of those West Coast games are. Super, super interesting. I do lean Gonzaga, but just really excited to watch it.
Yeah, I would lean Gonzaga too. I think it's actually a pretty big game just for both teams. If Gonzaga wants to keep a 1 seed, I think they might have to win this game. I don't know if the committee would give them a 1 seed with a loss, and then they still would probably have to play St. Mary's again in the tournament. So I don't know. I mean, I would consider them still for a 1 seed because I think they're one of the best teams in the country, but who knows with the committee what they would do. So I think it's big for Gonzaga to stay undefeated, and I think it's big for St. Mary's. Now, St. Mary's is going to make the tournament. That we're not going to have a situation like last year where they deserve to get in but won't. But their resume is a little soft.
Yeah.
If they lose this game, I think their only good win is at Dayton, which is a good win. But they if they lose this and then would lose to them in the conference tournament as well, they're looking at a 7-10 game, 8-9 game maybe. I don't know if they're going to give St. Mary's a 5-6 seed with. I know they'll have a gaudy win total, but there's not really much to it. So I think it's a big game for both teams. So we'll see who helps themselves out. But yeah, I'm with you. I would definitely lean the Zags on this one.
Yeah, I agree, and that was a good point. It really adds credibility to St. Mary's. If they're able to win this, okay, you get a win against the number one team in the country, and that really bolsters your resume. If they don't pick this up and they get swept by Gonzaga, you're right. They're banking on at Dayton and home against Nevada as their big wins. And when you boil it down, regardless of the ranking next to your name, that's for a 7-10, as you said. So the next game that caught our eye here was Cincinnati at SMU, the big American showdown. Aldo, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, this is another big game. I think these are two teams that are actually just very underrated. We talked about Cincinnati before. I think SMU is underrated as well. If you came to me, in April and Cincinnati made it to the Elite Eight and SMU made it to the Sweet 16, I really wouldn't be that shocked. I think that they're both really good teams. The American just sucks. It's terrible. And I think that really hurts them. But I think it's a huge game. I would put my money on Cincinnati to win it. I just think Cincinnati's a good team. I know that I left them out in my top 16.
Yeah, you're biting those words now.
I know. Well, no, that was more for resume reasons. But come tourney time, I love this team. I love Troy Copain. He's been one of my favorite players the last 4 years. I don't think he gets nearly enough love. He's just a gritty point guard, takes big shots, has made big shots in the tournament. He only averages, I think, 10 to 12 points a game. And, Cincinnati doesn't get up and down, so he doesn't get the love that some of these other dudes get. But he's an awesome player, and I think that both these teams can make a run. SMU's real interesting. They play like 6.5 guys. They probably have the thinnest bench in the country. And the other interesting thing is that they're all like 6'4" to 6'8". They don't have a big, and they don't have like a short guard. It's crazy. They're all like 6'4", 6'5" to like 6'7", 6'8". It's wild. So it'll be definitely an interesting game, and hopefully it's a great game. So at least the American can say that they've got two good teams because everybody else really not helping them out.
Absolutely. I mean, this is a monster game for SMU. SMU, you're right. I think they're underrated too. I mean, they had some interesting showings at the beginning of the year. I think they were in a tournament up at MSG where they took down Pittsburgh, who at the time was a good win, but as thus changed. So they're really looking for something on their resume as well. And they went to Cincinnati and lost by a deuce, 66-64. So these teams are really evenly matched. I think this is going to be a really awesome game. Cincinnati is going to defend, but you kind of hit it. The SMU rosters are so interchangeable, and they all can kind of do everything. That they're a tough matchup to get. So I'm curious to see what happens here. I actually like SMU in this one. I think they'll be able to take it to Cincinnati. As Cincinnati, eventually you got to stumble in conference play. I mean, you'd think it's going to be a really, really good game. And if Cincinnati is able to win this, it definitely locks in two teams for the American, and maybe a few others are able to sneak in there. As we've said, the bubble is kind of thin this year. But super exciting game, and that one's actually on Sunday, so hopefully it gets a lot more viewership than it would if it was packed into the middle of a busy Saturday.
Yeah, let me know if you want to, go juiceless. That's it's always better to go juiceless, kids. You never want to just give away 10%. So
Exactly right,
yeah, let me know later if you want to go. I don't know what the line is. I don't know what KenPom's got it at, but I like Cincinnati. But it should be a good game either way.
Yeah, Definitely should be.
So that line hasn't come out yet, but Saturday lines are out. What is the free money this week, John?
Okay, so before we get into free money, I think we should just recap on our record thus far.
Yeah,
I am
sure.
one
Go
and
ahead.
one. You're what are you?
I'm 0-2 with a win in the Super Bowl prop bet column, so I'll take it. I told everybody to load the boat. I'm sorry about the other two, but we'll work it back this week.
Got it. Okay. So here's I have three plays for you this Saturday. I like Rutgers +6 at home against Minnesota. I have been on Rutgers the last two games as underdogs, and they have done very, very well for me. This team, although they're not very good, they play so hard, and they're never out of a game. If they're getting 6 points at home against Minnesota, give me the points. So I'm taking Rutgers at home.
Get that rack magic.
Rack Magic is alive and well. They almost had some guarded magic. They took Wisconsin to overtime. So Rutgers is on the verge, and now is the time to get them with a lot of the values. I think they've covered their last few. I like Houston -2.5 at Tulsa. I think it's crunch time for Houston. They're playing pretty well. 2.5 points is a little thin for me at Tulsa. Tulsa's been giving some teams some fits at home, but I think Houston's scoring ability, they're able to get it done there. And then my last play is kind of an interesting one. I'm playing both ends of the spectrum here. I like Kentucky -7 at Alabama. I watched that Alabama game. It was quadruple overtime. Dudes were like airballing threes because they were so tired, and now they have to turn around and host Kentucky. So I think Alabama's going to come out a little flat. And Calipari laid into his Kentucky players after their last performance. So I think it's one team that's really gassed and one team that's really motivated. So I like Kentucky -7 there.
All right, I'm going to start us off. I like FSU with the points. They're getting 2.5 at Notre Dame. I really don't get Vegas. They just still are not valuing Florida State. I think they're still 20-1 to win the whole thing. I don't get it. So I'm going to take the 2.5. They've been playing really good the last two games. So I'll roll with the Seminoles. I'm going to go Utah -11 at home against Washington because Washington is just a dumpster fire. Now they're just slapping kids. I don't know if you saw that.
Double slapping kids.
Double slapping kids. I don't even know if Fultz is going to play, to be honest. I think he was held out of the last game. I don't think it's anything serious. But regardless if Fultz plays or not, I will take whatever points Utah is laying against that mess of a team. And my last one is UNCW at Elon -4.5. I just have liked UNCW all year. They've played some tight ones close recently, but I will lay the 4.5 there against Elon. And before we get out of here, John, what is your let it fly
All right,
of
it's time
the
to
week?
let it fly. Let it fly of the week. Yesterday was a big day in college basketball, but it was actually a big day for True TV. College basketball fans know True TV is that like fourth channel that hosts the first weekend of games. But outside of the college basketball tournament, they actually have a pretty good lineup. And season 6 of Impractical Jokers started. I rewatched that season 6 of Impractical Jokers. It is the only show that I laugh out loud watching. And it's probably really the only show that I watch during college basketball season because if I'm not watching college basketball, I really find my way to Impractical Jokers. So if you haven't watched that, please do. It's hilarious. They have awesome clips on YouTube, and it's a really, really great show. So glad that fired back up.
Yeah, I've never been a huge fan of that show, but maybe I'll give it some more run. But so my let it fly is, Valentine's Day is coming up next week. This whole podcast, shoot your shot, especially with the ladies. If you and your girl are looking for a movie to watch, you should watch Love and Basketball. It's an older movie. I hope that everyone listening has already seen it. But if you haven't, you can gain points with your girl. It's a great love story, and you get to watch pretty much a half basketball, half love story movie. It's a really good movie. I recommend it. So if you're looking to watch a movie on Valentine's Day, or really any time, just to try and gain some bonus points, I would recommend Love and Basketball. I know that my co-host here has not yet seen it, and it kills me, but maybe one day.
I was gonna say, I think this is like a backhanded compliment here. Yes, I haven't seen it. I plan to see it. I see it on TV sometimes. I gotta wait for the right mood. Might need to talk to a girl before I actually watch that movie.
Yeah, that would be a good idea. Remember to shoot your shot. unlike John Scuteri. All right, kids. That's it for this week. We'll see you next Friday on Shoot Your Shot. Just always remember, whether it's a girl in your class, whether you're 0 for 17, Valentine's Day's coming up. Just shoot your shot. All right, we will see you. All right.
That was good.
Yeah. I don't really think there's anything I got to edit other than the front and back.
Yeah, I think that was good. Well, we came up probably like 45 minutes. I think we started at like.
Yeah, that's the only thing. I was looking halfway through because I was curious on the time, and I noticed that this the Hangouts doesn't have like a running clock.
Yeah, I was just looking at the clock. I think we were at about 50 minutes.
Okay, that's solid. I think as long as we stay between like 40 and 50 minutes, it's solid.
Yeah. Dude, I didn't even look. What is that Gonzaga line?
I have no idea. Yeah,
like,
I didn't.
As we were talking about that game, I was like, "Oh shit, I kind of want to take this one as one of my picks," but I didn't know the line.
Yeah, I have no idea.
That's good.
All right. Okay. I got a good beat for our intro and outro, so we'll do that, and I'll throw in the same Jesperson clip.
Yeah, and tweet it out on our oh shit, we didn't give a Twitter shout. Tweet it out on the Twitter.
Oh, Jesus! Again, and then we haven't even said where to listen to it.
I know. Oh, that's funny. Well, we'll be sure to do that. But yeah, tweet it out on our